Hey everybody, Chris from Six Wins here with Matt, and we're here to reveal the winner of our bracket that we did, and it was the worst things bracket.
Yes.
So if you missed it, what we did was we put a bracket together full of 64 of the worst things imaginable, and we did daily polls as we tend to do, Six Wins bracket polls. And we have the winner here. Nobody knows except for me and Matt who won this thing. But
That's true.
so we're gonna go with a little bit of we're gonna kind of give like a little bit of a breakdown of the bracket, kind of give our feelings on it, and then we'll let you know what the finals matchup was and let you know the winner.
I've got a worse thing going on right now. I just got some in my eyes, so we'll keep rolling. But that did not make the bracket anywhere. But new worst thing, things in your eyeball.
Yeah, I hate eye stuff.
Yeah, eye stuff. Yeah. So we could start with like any maybe overall things before we kind of break down at least our final four. What were some of our big dogs in the bracket that you felt were going to go all the way?
Yeah, I was thinking, I had a couple. So easily offended people, that was like my number one draft pick overall. I was really pulling for that just because with the times we're in, I think maybe we're kind of at a turning point where it's getting a little better, but I feel like easily offended people are some of the worst people, not just when you get easily offended, but when you take it a step further and, public outcry for things that don't affect you in your daily life at all. You just try to be that social justice warrior, and I'm going to stand up for this because I think it's right, but really you're not making anything better. You're just, kind of a whiner.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, I think too, politicians, specifically U.S. politicians, because I don't know really much about politics, period, but I really don't know anything about politics outside of the U.S. of A., which is where we're from. I just know politicians, all kind of a bummer, and then with all the stuff that came out, the unfortunate things about just how many of them were, at that notorious island with the children, which brings me to my next point, which actually met up with politicians. Pedophiles. They kind of...
This was an Elite Eight matchup. Yeah.
This was an Elite Eight matchup. Politicians versus pedophiles. I was actually polling for politicians to win as the worst thing here.
It sounds hard to say that.
I know.
Pedophiles was like the one thing I think in our bracket that it was like, anything that goes up against it feels really bad to not vote for pedophiles as worse than something.
Yeah.
But we kind of talked about this, like, a good number of us don't ever have any like direct experience with a pedophile, and so we know it's like a terrible thing and it messes up people for a long time. But like some of the other stuff on here, like, will affect you at some point. Politicians have a direct effect on your life. Bad drivers, which is kind of my number one after I really thought about it and broke it down. Like, bad drivers just set me in a mood like nothing else. Like, basically on the same level as like when the worst of like political stuff happens. Same thing when a bad driver is around. I'm ready to like go on a killing spree.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which are also terrible things. But that's how close I am with bad drivers.
Killing sprees. No good. My logic to voting for a politician as worse than a pedophile, because it's like more than a pedophile, because a politician 9 times out of 10 is already a pedophile.
Yes.
But they're just pulling all the strings and making all the rules, and they're just so fake. They're just so see-through. And I never could see myself hanging out with a politician, but now it sounds like I could see myself hanging out with a pedophile, which couldn't do that either. But I feel like if you're a pedophile,
aside from that,
you
might be a like decent person.
Right. Well, it opens it up for debate. Like, say you were born with just the most unfortunate circumstance of you are a pedophile. You are attracted to kids. What if you stuff it down and you never act upon it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you still a pedophile? Or do you have to actually act on your deep desires?
Yeah.
There was a funny joke about pedophiles. Mark Norman, one of my favorite comedians, and I hope I don't botch it too bad. I hate reciting other comedians' jokes, but he says something like this. He's like, When I was 13, I was attracted to 13-year-olds. Now, I'm 36, I'm attracted to 36-year-olds. When I was 13, I liked grapefruit juice. Now I'm 36, I like wine. But I still like grapefruit juice. And it's like, how close that was to becoming a pedophile. So that would have been unfortunate. But,
well, so yeah, since we did kind of reveal this Elite Eight matchup and we talked about it, I think I would have voted politicians too. I think it's because of that, close and directness of how often I have to be inundated with things about it. Pedophile news isn't all over all the time. It only comes up when it's like the worst, even though it does happen more often, which is a shame. We should add, I don't know, news and then whatever they broadcast. I don't know how we should do it. I don't have a solution. But pedophiles did advance to the Final Four as one of our worst things over politicians. This is, we were talking about easily offended people as your kind of one of your big number ones. It also made the Elite Eight up against death. And I kind of picked this one and I put it early as a 2 seed and I thought this could backfire because of just like memes and jokes and how like death versus like another really bad thing. And for the laughs you go, oh yeah, the other bad thing is way worse. I'd rather be dead than go to my job. Right. I'd rather be dead than be in a porta potty.
Right.
So I was expecting it to lose for like the laughs early, but it advanced. It went up against easily offended people. I would maybe go death because I'm one of those people that just like, man, I'd live forever if I could. And that's people are both ways about it. I can understand. There are other times when like, yeah, I'll be happy when I'm dead, but I would go death. Would you have gone easily offended people?
Truth be told, I probably would have gone death.
Yeah, and people agreed. Death continued moving on to the Final Four. So right now, death and pedophiles were in our Final Four.
Yeah.
And how about on our rounding out our Final Four?
Rounding out our Final Four. Well, to one of the Elite Eight matchup to enter the Final Four, it was depression versus drug addiction. So kind of more on the mental health side of things, both mental health issues, big time. This was kind of close for me. I work a lot with people with drug addiction and stuff like that, so I see it closer up. I see the damage that it can cause in one's life. But on the flip side, I also see what awesome things can come up when people recover from drug addiction. So it's splitting hairs. I would probably just at face value, I'd probably go drug addiction. Not just for the individual. I think for the individual it can kind of be like neck and neck, but like for like the damage it causes with like the family around, like yeah, it sucks being around a depressed person and seeing that, but like with a drug addicted person, you're talking about like a whirlwind of just like destruction on another level. So I'm gonna go drug addiction as like the worst thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people actually pointed out that these two are very often linked as well. Like if you have one, it may be because of the other, or if you have one, you may use the other to cope. And they can kind of be this just recurring cycle of getting out of one and into the other. So I have been very fortunate to not really had any personal experience for myself with these. I've known people who have been in depressions or have had drug issues and things like that. I think as sort of a comedic way to answer this question, how I would vote, I would say I would pick depression as the worst thing, because drug addiction, as you said, if you come out of it, it's very positive, but people who have a drug addiction, even though they don't want it and it wrecks their lives, when they're on the drugs, they feel really good.
Yeah,
and they're like, I don't care how bad this is. It makes me feel good. It's not a good, but depression. Nobody's like, I want depression because it feels good, and then I feel bad after. You're like, oh, I just feel like shit the whole time. So that's how I would rationalize in a silly, ridiculous, comedic way how I would vote depression. They're both bad things. Honestly, I'd probably vote drug addiction because I'd probably rather just be in a depressed state than have drug addiction. But I'll say depression for the weird ramble I just did.
Yeah, for sure.
Who moved on to the Final Four? This was a close one.
Yeah, drug addiction, voted by our subscribers and followers. Drug addiction is moving on to the Final Four.
The only thing I'll say before we get our other Final Four, this was the bracket with bad drivers, and so I will say, I think bad drivers should have won it all. Bad drivers lost to depression. Bad drivers are worse. Bad drivers versus drug addiction, the close one, but I'm salty about bad drivers and forever will be.
Yeah. Bad drivers are bad. Moving on to the next one. This one I liked. I disagree. I disagree with the results, but we'll get to that here in a second. Natural disasters versus Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby.
Everything was so obvious here for a terrible 7, and then, I mean, Cosby obviously very terrible.
Yeah.
But,
well, here's the thing.
Funny guy in there.
Yeah, you want to throw, I feel like anything you're going to throw at pedophiles that has a content, that could contend, I don't want to get demonetized, we probably will. Rape. He did a lot of that.
Sure.
So I'm curious to see, if we didn't just go with the specific individual Bill Cosby and just gone with RAPERS.
Or sexual crimes.
Sexual crimes.
Sexual assault in some way.
Which one's worse? That's more of a debate. But Cosby also had some redeeming qualities. He helped a lot of people, apparently. He, provided a lot of entertainment. I don't have the stats in front of me, but apparently he, funded a lot of people in the African American community through college and through school. So, terrible, but has its redeeming qualities. I don't know if natural disasters can say the same.
No, yeah, I don't think natural disasters usually have any redeeming qualities. Unless it not that you can see until hundreds of years later, where it's it refertilized the ground actually because nobody could use it for a long time because of a big flood that destroyed everything.
Yeah.
So
Cosby refertilized a lot of ground.
Hey, there you go. But yeah, Cosby kind of falls into that same line of pedophiles though, where a pedophile has this one really terrible aspect about them, but they could we know more about Bill Cosby than choose random pedophile here. But like you said, Bill Cosby was really well loved in his day when people didn't know those things. He was a really important person in so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
I would have picked natural disasters. I think I have a hard time voting for a single person as a worst thing. Because I guess I don't know enough about that person to truly be able to judge them against a general bad thing. There are definitely people I hate and can't stand or that I think are terrible, but I'd rather not pick them because how do you weigh the terrible awful things that he did to dozens, maybe hundreds of people versus the good that he brought to thousands, possibly millions? I mean, that good is through the television, made people happy, made people see an African American on TV and things like that. But you can't so quantity wise, he touched more people positively, and he touched people negatively. But how do you weigh that qualitatively? Be if you've committed very serious crimes. So that's always hard. And so I almost feel I could never vote for a person because I don't know how. It's very subjective and how we weigh that.
Yeah, and we did have a handful of individuals on the bracket. Cosby made it the furthest. So out of the people,
But he did. Did he go to the Final Four?
He did not. He did not win the vote against natural disasters. Maybe more people voting felt like natural disasters kill more people flat out and
destroy homes, ruin buildings, millions, billions in property damage, loss of life, injury. And again, it's one of those things that natural disasters probably have had a more direct impact on your life or someone at some point than Bill Cosby negatively. But so that's our Final Four for worst thing, death and pedophiles. Death and taxes, pedophiles, and drug addiction and natural disasters. I can't believe we didn't have taxes. It just seems like a weird thing, but interesting.
Yeah, taxes are bad. So between death and pedophiles, what do you think?
Oh, again, it's so hard to vote against pedophiles, but I would vote death. Why not?
Yeah. Famous comedian by the name of Norm Macdonald once.
Mark Norman McDonald.
Once said a really kind of profound thing about death. He said, you should never fear death because as long as you're here, death can't be here. And when death is here, you won't be here. So you and death will never, ever intersect. So interesting thought about death. But I'm going pedophiles.
There you go.
I'm going to go pedophiles. And when the voting all shook out, which one is moving on to the finals?
Pedophiles moving on to the finals. Maybe not surprising after just kind of how we saw it tear through and nothing was really close to it. I think Politicians and Pedophiles was kind of the first one that was even sort of close for pedophiles, but yeah, pedophiles, people were not going to vote against it as something's worse than that. So it did make our finals, and it was going to go against drug addiction or natural disasters. For me, this seems like a very big mismatch. Like, I'm surprised natural disasters went that far. It was out of everything that made the Final Four. Oh no, drug addiction was actually seeded very low, but it was one of those things where there were a couple things that we seeded and kind of came up with too late and realized, we missed something. Mm-hmm. I almost feel like you could just switch it with the number 2 it went up against. But natural disasters was kind of like a natural number 3, mm-hmm. whereas pedophiles was a 2, death was a 2, and drug addiction, I guess, was a 15. But
and that was one of those things I think for a lot of them we're going for kind of silly, maybe relatable things, observational type makes up a lot of the bracket. And then towards the end of our draft, I remember I was like, I haven't thrown this on there. This is a good one. So I just threw it on there on a whim, not even planning on actually putting it on there. So I think it just kind of had this Cinderella run with it. If I would have taken it more seriously and put serious stuff at a higher seed, probably would have ended up in the first 3 seeds.
But yeah, so first of all, natural disasters making the Final Four was a bit of a surprise to me. It beat out things like we said, like Bill Cosby. It beat out things like Your Job. What was the 2 down here actually?
2
it was Mondays. I'm not surprised it beat Mondays actually. But yeah, so to me, natural disasters are really bad. I don't want to downplay them, but I think like a very deeply personal and internalized struggle like drug addiction or like a depression and things like that, I think those are some of the honestly worst things because they're so pinpoint and they so much are just specific right in on an individual person. Whereas like for better or worse, it's very sad, but like big tragedies and big natural disasters or wars and stuff like that it's just so hard to comprehend. Mm-hmm. Like the numbers are impossible to actually like wrap your head around and feel all of the pain that something like that has actually caused. Yeah. Like we just don't have the capacity to understand how many lives and feel everything from a natural disaster and things like that. But we can totally get depression for one person, for yourself, and or drug addiction for one person, for yourself, and things like that. So I think those are the things that strike me as like the worst, more than like these big overarching things that are just like sadly global tragedies that will, of course, always happen, and we kind of like turn our head away and go, and we make jokes about it. For me, drug addiction, no brainer over natural disasters, though, and that's why.
Yeah. I agree. I would go drug addiction. And I don't know, you did a really good job kind of tying a bow around it. So I'm gonna, just agree, nod along. But when it did come to the voting, what did the people say?
They agreed as well. Maybe not for the same reasons I vocalized, but we've got our finals for worst things. We had pedophiles, we had drug addiction. Any thoughts before you reveal the winner?
Yeah, I think the only thing that's worse than either of these two is a drug-addicted pedophile. No, I'm just kidding. And here's, which I'm sure a lot of them probably are, and a lot of them are probably depressed. Especially if they live, not super close to an elementary school. I wanted to make one point too, that when we were building this bracket, we thought of a lot more terrible things that could have gone on this bracket, but
More in line with pedophiles than some of the
Yeah.
other stuff, yeah.
yeah, that felt in like poor taste.
Mhm.
So, for example, Hitler, Holocaust, slavery, the N-word, like things that are truly, truly the worst things. 9/11, but it felt really icky to pit these things up in a bracket that we typically do for entertainment. So we kind of had to toe the line between like, okay, let's get some really worse things, and like, when did we go overboard? And sometimes that line is really hard to figure out where it is, because I'm sure, me and you might have different lines as opposed to like, the hundreds of people who are voting. So.
Yeah, and I think like we probably could have made it work, but it would have had to be a smaller bracket if we did like those really bad things that Chris talked about. Because 64 things, at some point you do get down to kind of like mundane things, like Mondays,
Yeah.
like your job. And so even though like those wouldn't have gone on against these really bad things, those matchups would have happened at some point in the first round. So you would have had like literally like the Holocaust versus like your daily job.
Yeah.
And that would have been like the first couple days of like our polling, and people would have been like, this is just really bad. And so I think we were just wanted to be cautious on like having those matchups happen and play out, and people being like, people comment all the time like, are you really asking this? And it's like a pretty like compelling matchup, like funniest person or like best actor. It's like Tom Hanks versus Daniel Day-Lewis. Are you kidding me? Is this even a question? Like, God knows what would happen if we put like, something truly terrible versus lettuce, like I put on there, and get killed. So we did not want to do that. But pedophiles was kind of one of those like worst things that are just like, yeah, people are gonna probably vote for it as just like on principle. That a lot of the other really bad things we left off were. So I did expect pedophiles to win once it got here, since it beat like other things. But I think drug addiction. I think a lot of these things, I'm not to downplay pedophilia, the grossness of it, but I think a lot of many things on this list are worse than pedophiles.
Yeah, like I said, especially like if you're drug addicted, you're drug addicted. I guess the thing you're addicted to can be better or worse. Like technically caffeine's a drug. If you're a coffee addict, it's not as bad as heroin or, fentanyl, whatever they got out there these days. But then at the same token, pedophiles, you could be an active one who's out seeking, or you could be one that's like knows it's wrong, has to fight, stuff it down, but doesn't ever act on it. So,
I think if this was framed as pedophilia, the act itself and not the person who is more than just that, because we're all more than our worst things. And I think a lot of times in our society we forget that. And if you do something wrong, or if you said something wrong or something like that, people want to be like, you're this, and you have no other redeeming qualities. I think if it was pedophilia as like the condition, maybe that's how I could justify this one being the worst thing overall. No, that's my final thought on that. I still go drug addiction.
Okay.
But that's my final thought on that.
Okay. I'm gonna go pedophiles. And when we did put it up to a poll, the finals matchup, pedophiles versus drug addiction, the winner of the worst things bracket.
So we have a check for the winner.
We have a check for the winner. And the winner of the worst things bracket, pedophiles.
Pedophiles!
Yay!
You get, because we're 6 wings, you get a 6-year prison sentence that will be recurring at 6 years. It's not just 1 6-year, it goes on until you die, but it's 6 at a time.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Way to go, pedophiles. You are officially the worst thing.
You can come get this check. I will be wearing just a skimpy bathing suit when you pick it up, and that will also be part of your prize.
Yes. And we'll do it at the nearest, middle schools. So that was it. Thank you for tuning in. That was our bracket review of the worst things, and we'll see you next time.
See you.